In a world filled with constant noise, the idea of silence as a source of power might seem foreign, but Dr. Wayne Dyer often pointed out that it's in silence that we discover our deepest, most authentic wisdom. The wisdom within us has always been there, quietly waiting for us to listen. In silence, we connect with something deeper, a truth beyond the clutter and busyness of our minds, something that aligns with our essence and guides us in profound ways. When we seek answers, our first instinct is often to look outside of ourselves. We turn to others for advice, read books, listen to experts, or scroll through endless articles and post hoping to find a spark of clarity. While these resources can be helpful, they often pull us in multiple directions, leaving us feeling more confused than clear. True guidance, Dr. Dyer believed, comes from within. Our inner wisdom is like a compass, a steady guide that exists beyond the noise and distractions of the outside world. And to access it, we must be willing to enter into silence. Silence creates a space where we can listen to ourselves. In the absence of external noise, we're free to tune into our thoughts, emotions, and feelings without the filters of others' opinions. Silence allows us to confront ourselves honestly, without judgment or pressure. Often we avoid silence because it forces us to look inward and face aspects of ourselves we might prefer to ignore. Yet this inward gaze is crucial if we're to access our deepest wisdom. Through silence, we begin to see our motivations, fears, and aspirations with clarity, free from the external expectations that shape our daily decisions. This awareness is the first step toward understanding who we truly are and what we genuinely want from life. When we sit in silence, we often find our mind racing with thoughts. At first, the mind's chatter can feel overwhelming, as if our thoughts are competing for our attention. But if we remain in silence, something magical happens. The chatter begins to quiet down. Like a lake settling after a storm, mind starts to find a state of calm. In this calm, there is space for new insights to emerge. These insights don't come from logical analysis or rational thought. They arise naturally, often as sudden realizations or gentle nudges. These moments of clarity are messages from our inner wisdom surfacing in the quiet spaces between our thoughts. The more we practice silence, the more familiar this space becomes, and the easier it is to access the guidance it offers. In silence, we connect with our intuition, a source of knowledge that isn't bound by linear thinking or confined to words. Intuition speaks to us in subtler ways through feelings, impressions, or a sense of knowing that doesn't require explanation. We all have moments of intuition, those times when we just know something without being able to explain why. This is our inner wisdom at work, guiding us through feelings rather than logic. By embracing silence, we strengthen our connection to this intuitive knowledge. Instead of doubting or dismissing our gut feelings, we learn to trust them, recognizing them as valuable guidance from within. Dr. Dyer often encouraged people to listen to these inner promptings, viewing them as messages from a higher source that knows what's best for us, even when we can't see the full picture. One of the greatest gifts of silence is that it brings us into the present moment. In our busy lives, we're often caught up in thoughts of the past or concerns about the future. Our minds are rarely where our feet are, constantly drifting between regrets and worries. But silence grounds us. It brings our awareness back to the here and now, where life is actually happening. In the present moment, we can fully engage with our feelings and experiences without judgment. This presence is a gateway to our inner wisdom because it frees us from the noise of past conditioning and future anxieties. It allows us to respond to situations from a place of authenticity rather than reacting out of habit. In the stillness of the present, we gain a clear perspective on our challenges, seeing them not as obstacles but as opportunities for growth and learning. When we spend time in silence, we also deepen our connection to something larger than ourselves. Many people describe this as feeling connected to the universe, God, or a divine presence. In silence, we tap into a source of wisdom that feels timeless and infinite, as though we're aligning with something beyond our individual selves. Dr. Dyer believed that we are all connected to this universal wisdom which flows through everything in existence. By quieting our minds, we become more receptive to this divine guidance, gaining a sense of peace and assurance that transcends our everyday concerns. We feel supported, guided, and connected to a purpose that is greater than our individual desires. In our noisy, fast-paced world, silence can feel challenging to embrace. We're so used to filling every moment with activity or entertainment that the idea of sitting in stillness might even feel uncomfortable. But the discomfort is temporary. The more we practice silence, the more we realize its richness. Silence becomes a refuge, a place where we can reconnect with our true selves and find the guidance we seek. Dr. Wayne Dyer often reminded us that you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience in silence. We reconnect with our spiritual essence, aligning ourselves with the wisdom that resides at the core of our being. This inner wisdom has always been with us, patiently waiting for us to pause, to listen, and to trust. In silence, we discover a power far greater than words could ever convey. It's the power of knowing who we truly are, of understanding our purpose, and of feeling deeply connected to the world around us. Through silence, we access a wisdom that guides us with clarity, compassion, and grace, leading us toward a life of meaning and fulfillment. In a world constantly urging us to do more, achieve more, and become more, there's a profound truth that often goes unnoticed: we are enough as we are. This realization is rarely found amid the hustle and bustle of everyday life, where our sense of worth can become entangled with accomplishments, social status, and the opinions of others. Instead, it emerges most powerfully in silence, where we can step away from external expectations and truly connect with our inner selves. In these quiet moments, we start to feel a deep sense of completeness and self-acceptance that doesn't rely on anything external. Silence, in this way, becomes not just a state, but a profound teacher, guiding us to see ourselves in a new light. Silence strips away the need for validation. When we are alone with our thoughts, away from the external noise of society, we can begin to detach from the pressures to perform, to impress, or to measure up to a standard that's often impossible to meet. In silence, there's no audience, no one to compare ourselves to, and no expectation to fulfill. We're left only with ourselves, and in that space we have the opportunity to see ourselves clearly without the layers of judgment that often cloud our vision. In this undisturbed state, we begin to understand that our worth is inherent. It's not something that needs to be earned, it's simply a part of who we are. Silence reminds us that our value doesn't depend on what we achieve or how we're perceived by others. Being alone with our thoughts can sometimes be uncomfortable. It's easy to fill our lives with distractions to avoid facing the things we don't like about ourselves. But in silence, there's nowhere to hide. This might sound daunting, but it's actually an incredible gift. Silence gives us the space to confront our insecurities, our self-doubts, and the limiting beliefs we carry. Instead of being bombarded with society's messages about what we should be, we have the chance to look at ourselves through a kinder, more compassionate lens. We realize that many of our perceived shortcomings are simply stories we've picked up along the way. The silence allows us to question these stories and recognize that they aren't a reflection of our true selves. In this stillness, we also become aware of the qualities that make us unique, qualities that can't be quantified or measured by conventional standards. We might notice our capacity for kindness, our ability to persevere, or the strength we've developed through life's challenges. These are the parts of ourselves that are often overlooked in a world focused on achievements and status. But in silence, we can appreciate these qualities for what they are, recognizing that they are enough, that we are enough, that we are enough, simply because they reflect our true essence. There's a beauty in this realization, a quiet confidence that comes from understanding that our worth is not tied to what we do, but to who we are. One of the profound aspects of silence is that it brings us into the present moment. When we're silent, we're not thinking about the past or worrying about the future. We're simply being. This state of presence reveals a powerful truth in this moment. We are whole. There's nothing we need to add, nothing we need to take away. The need for constant improvement fades away, replaced by a sense of acceptance and peace. In the present moment, we're free from the endless loop of striving, and we realize that who we are right now is enough. This realization doesn't mean we stop growing or evolving. It simply means that our growth comes from a place of love and acceptance rather than lack or fear. Silence also allows us to connect with something larger than ourselves. When we're in a quiet, meditative state, we often feel a sense of oneness with the world around us, a connection to something that transcends our individual identities. This sense of connection reinforces the idea that we are an essential part of the whole, that our presence matters. In these moments, we feel that we belong, not because of what we've achieved or how we look, but because we are simply part of the fabric of existence. There's a comfort in knowing that we don't need to prove ourselves. Our worth is already established by our very existence. Through silence, we can let go of the need for external validation. In our day-to-day lives, it's easy to get caught up in seeking approval from others, hoping that their recognition will somehow make us feel more complete. But in silence, we realize that no amount of external validation can fill the void if we don't first accept ourselves. The opinions of others start to matter less, and we find that the only approval we truly need is our own. This shift is empowering. We become less dependent on others' perceptions and more grounded in our own sense of self-worth. In silence, we find a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be announced or proven, it simply is. Furthermore, silence helps us recognize that our value is not tied to our productivity. In a society that places so much emphasis on output and efficiency, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that our worth is based on what we can produce. But in silence, we're reminded that we are valuable simply because we exist. This realization can be incredibly freeing. We no longer feel the pressure to constantly be doing something to justify our existence. Instead, we can simply be knowing that this is enough. This doesn't mean we stop setting goals or working toward our dreams. It means that our sense of worth is no longer contingent on these pursuits. In silence, we also begin to trust ourselves more. Without the constant input of others' opinions and societal expectations, we learn to rely on our own judgment and intuition. We become our own source of guidance, understanding that we have within us everything we need to navigate life's challenges. This self-trust is a natural extension of realizing our own worth. When we see ourselves as enough, we no longer need others to validate our choices. We become empowered to make decisions based on our inner truth, confident in our ability to handle whatever comes our way. The power of silence lies in its ability to reveal our true selves, free from the layers of conditioning and societal expectations. It shows us that we are enough not because of what we have or what we do, but because of who we are. In silence, we find a deep, unshakable sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on external validation or achievement. We realize that we are whole, complete, and worthy of love and respect just as we are. This is the gift of silence, a profound connection to our true selves and the empowering knowledge that we are, and always have been, enough. In our world, we are often led to believe that control is the key to success. We're taught to plan, to strategize, to manage every detail of our lives in the hope that with enough effort and determination, we can steer everything to unfold exactly as we want. But life is unpredictable. And no matter how much we plan or try to control, there will always be things beyond our grasp. Silence, however, offers us a way to let go of this need for control, allowing us to release our tight grip and embrace a deeper faith in the natural flow of life, in the wisdom of the universe, and in the belief that things are unfolding as they should. In silence, we come face to face with our desire for control. Left alone with our thoughts, we often feel the urge to solve, to figure out, to plan. We may begin running through scenarios in our minds, worrying about outcomes, or trying to prepare for every possible eventuality. But if we allow ourselves to truly settle into silence, we realize that all this mental striving doesn't bring peace, it only intensifies our sense of tension and restlessness. We come to understand that the more we try to control, the more we disconnect ourselves from the natural flow of life, resisting rather than accepting what is. Silence helps us see the futility in this struggle, encouraging us to loosen our grip and find peace in the present moment. The act of letting go of control requires trust, and silence helps cultivate that trust. When we sit quietly, we step away from the constant cycle of doing and problem solving. We take a break from trying to force our will upon the world and instead allow ourselves to be still. In this stillness, we begin to sense that there is a greater intelligence at work, a rhythm to life that doesn't require our constant interference. We start to understand that things have a way of unfolding in their own time, often in ways we couldn't have planned or predicted. By allowing ourselves to be quiet, we give space for this natural wisdom to emerge, and we develop a faith in it, trusting that even when things seem uncertain, they're moving in a direction that ultimately serves us. Silence also teaches us patience, an essential element in releasing control. When we're caught in the habit of controlling, we're often impatient for results. We want things to happen according to our timelines, and we grow frustrated when they don't. But in silence, time feels different. We're no longer racing toward the future or clinging to the past, we're simply present. In this presence, we begin to understand that life moves at its own pace. There is a beauty in this slower rhythm, a reminder that things do not need to happen all at once. Silence helps us cultivate patience by grounding us in the now, allowing us to release our timelines and surrender to life's natural unfolding. In moments of silence, we can also confront our fears. Often our desire for control is rooted in fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of loss. We try to control to shield ourselves from these fears, believing that if we manage every detail, we can prevent unwanted outcomes. But silence allows us to sit with these fears, to observe them without judgment. In doing so, we realize that much of what we fear exists only in our minds as thoughts or scenarios that may never come to pass. By acknowledging our fears without running from them, we find that they lose some of their power over us. This realization makes it easier to release control as we see that our attempts to manage everything are often driven by illusions of threat rather than real danger. Silence also opens a pathway to faith not only in life but in ourselves. When we are still, we begin to recognize that we have a strength and resilience within us that can handle whatever comes our way. This inner strength doesn't require us to manipulate or control external circumstances. Instead, it allows us to meet life as it is, trusting that we have the resources to navigate challenges as they arise. In silence, we become attuned to this inner resilience, finding confidence in our ability to adapt and grow regardless of the circumstances. This self-trust allows us to surrender more easily, knowing that we don't need to have everything figured out in advance. We can release control and embrace life with an open heart, ready to respond rather than react. Faith, as silence reveals, is not a passive state. It's an active choice to trust in something greater than our individual selves. Whether we call it the universe, a higher power, or simply the natural order of things, faith is an acknowledgement that we are part of a larger whole. In silence, we feel this connection more deeply. We sense that we are not isolated beings struggling to shape the world to our will, but rather participants in a vast, interconnected web of life. This perspective allows us to release our need to control as we come to see that we are supported by forces beyond our comprehension. Silence invites us to trust in this support, to believe that life itself is guiding us in ways that, while sometimes mysterious, are ultimately for our benefit. By letting go of control, we also create space for new possibilities. When we are constantly trying to shape outcomes, we limit ourselves to only what we can imagine or plan. But silence reminds us that there are infinite possibilities beyond what we can envision. When we release our tight grip on how things should be, we open ourselves to surprises, to serendipities, and to paths that we might never have considered. Silence, therefore, becomes a doorway to a life of openness and receptivity, where we allow ourselves to be guided by intuition, chance, and the unfolding mystery of existence. In the end, silence teaches us that true power doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. Surrendering doesn't mean giving up, it means trusting enough to let go. It means allowing life to move through us rather than constantly trying to bend it to our will. Silence is where we learn this art of surrender, where we begin to see that there is strength in allowing, grace in accepting, and wisdom in letting go. By embracing silence, we find a quiet faith that sustains us, a faith in ourselves and life and in the unknown. This faith frees us from the need to control, giving us the courage to live fully, to embrace uncertainty, and to experience life as the unfolding journey it's meant to be. In the rush of daily life, it's easy to get caught up in a whirlwind of thoughts, tasks, and distractions. Our minds are constantly racing, moving from one thing to the next, rarely pausing to check in with the present moment. We become so focused on the future or lost in the past that we forget to fully experience the here and now. Silence, however, has the incredible power to bring us back to the present. It invites us to slow down, to become aware of our surroundings, and most importantly, to reconnect with ourselves. Through silence, we rediscover the power of being present. The noise of the world often drowns out the subtle cues of life. It's easy to go through our days on autopilot, rushing through routines without truly engaging with the present moment. Silence provides an opportunity to pause, to stop the relentless stream of thoughts, and to simply be. In the stillness, we find a space where we can fully inhabit our bodies, our senses, and our feelings. Without the constant mental chatter, we begin to notice things we otherwise would have missed: the softness of a breeze, the rhythm of our breath, the texture of the world around us. Silence brings us into direct contact with the present moment, awakening our senses and allowing us to experience life more fully. Awareness is at the heart of presence, and silence cultivates that awareness. When we are silent, we give ourselves permission to tune into our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without judgment. We stop the mental chatter that often dictates our actions and create a space for mindful awareness to emerge. In this state of awareness, we become attuned to what is happening in the moment without the distractions of the past or future. This presence helps us see things as they truly are, without the filter of our preconceived notions or expectations. When we stop reacting to external stimuli and simply observe what's around us, we develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world. In silence, we come face to face with the mind's natural tendencies. The first thing that happens when we stop and become still is that the mind begins to fill the space with thoughts. At first, these thoughts can feel overwhelming, like a flood of endless ideas and worries. But silence teaches us not to resist these thoughts. Instead, it invites us to watch them come and go, to be aware of their presence without becoming entangled in them. This practice of observing without attachment allows us to understand that our thoughts are not who we are. They are simply passing phenomena, and we do not need to be consumed by them. The more we practice silence, the easier it becomes to notice the thoughts that arise without reacting to them, helping us to live with greater intentionality and presence. As we become more aware of our thoughts, we also become more aware of our emotions. In the noise of daily life, we often push our feelings aside, dismissing them as inconvenient or irrelevant. But silence invites us to sit with our emotions, to truly feel them rather than avoid them. When we are silent, we give ourselves the space to fully experience what we are feeling in the moment. Whether it's joy, sadness, frustration, or peace, silence allows us to embrace our emotions without judgment. This emotional awareness leads to greater self-acceptance as we begin to understand and honor our inner world. We no longer feel the need to suppress our feelings or pretend that everything is fine. Instead, we learn to acknowledge and experience our emotions as part of being fully alive. Presence is also about being fully engaged with the people around us. In our busy lives, it's easy to be physically present but mentally absent. How many times do we find ourselves sitting in a meeting or having a conversation while our minds are elsewhere, preoccupied with other thoughts or tasks? Silence can help us become present in our relationships by encouraging us to listen deeply. When we practice silence, we cultivate the ability to listen without interruption, without formulating a response before the other person has finished speaking. This type of listening creates a deeper connection, allowing us to truly hear what the other person is saying and to respond from a place of empathy and understanding. By being fully present in our interactions, we strengthen our relationships and develop a greater sense of connection with others. In a similar way, silence fosters a deeper connection with ourselves. In our fast-paced world, we often look for validation from external sources, our accomplishments, our social media presence, the opinions of others. But silence reminds us that true validation comes from within. When we allow ourselves to be silent, we connect with our authentic selves, the part of us that is not defined by external achievements or opinions. In this stillness, we find clarity about who we are and what we truly want. Silence allows us to hear the quiet whispers of our heart, guiding us toward decisions that align with our true nature. We can no longer ignore our inner voice, for in the silence it becomes loud and clear, offering direction and insight. Silence also invites us to reflect on our lives. It's in the stillness that we can take a step back and evaluate where we've been and where we're going. In a world that constantly urges us to do more and be more, it can be easy to lose sight of our own journey. But silence allows us to reflect on our values, our purpose, and our intentions. It gives us the space to question whether the path we're on is truly the one we want to be on, or if we're simply following the expectations set by others. Reflection through silence helps us reconnect with our deepest desires and ensures that we are living authentically and purposefully. Being present is not just about focusing on what's happening around us or within us, it's also about being present to life's mysteries. Silence teaches us to be open to the unknown, to embrace uncertainty with a sense of curiosity and trust. Often we become anxious when we cannot predict the future or control the outcomes of situations. But in silence, we learn to sit with uncertainty, to trust that life is unfolding exactly as it should. Presence in silence allows us to let go of the need for control and to surrender to the flow of life, knowing that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Silence holds a unique, transformative power that can fuel our creativity. In a world filled with constant noise, whether from social media, conversations, or the endless stream of daily tasks, our minds rarely have the chance to be truly still. Yet it is in this stillness, this quiet space, that some of the most powerful creative insights can emerge. Silence acts as a gateway to creativity by clearing away distractions and allowing our minds to wander freely. In this state, we can tap into deeper thoughts, explore our imagination, and allow ideas to bloom without interruption. Through silence, we come to realize that creativity often requires spaciousness, a kind of openness that only silence can bring. In our busy lives, the mind is often in a reactive mode, constantly processing and responding to incoming information. This leaves little room for the mind to generate something new, as it's focused on simply keeping up. Silence provides a pause, a break from the endless input, and gives our minds the chance to transition from reaction to reflection. When we sit in silence, we give ourselves permission to let go of the need to be constantly doing and instead simply be. This shift creates a fertile ground for new thoughts to arise naturally. Silence allows us to access the quieter parts of our mind, the parts that are often overshadowed by the noise of daily life. In these quieter mental spaces, creativity can flow more easily, unrestricted by outside influences or pressures. Silence also plays a crucial role in fostering original thinking. When we are constantly bombarded with ideas and opinions from others, it's easy for our creative instincts to become influenced or clouded by external perspectives. But in silence, we reconnect with our own thoughts and insights, unhindered by the ideas of others. This mental space allows us to explore our unique perspective, to consider possibilities that might not conform to conventional wisdom or popular opinion. In silence, our mind feels freer, more open to possibilities and alternative viewpoints. This freedom is essential for creativity, as it empowers us to approach problems and ideas from fresh, unconventional angles. Through silence, we learn to trust our own voice and vision, developing the confidence to bring forth ideas that are truly original. The creative process is often described as a journey through uncertainty. Many artists, writers, and creators experience moments of doubt, where they feel unsure about where an idea is going or whether it's worth pursuing. Silence can help us navigate these moments by allowing us to sit with uncertainty without the pressure to resolve it immediately. When we are silent, we don't feel the need to have all the answers. Instead, we become comfortable with the unknown, seeing it not as something to fear, but as a space to explore. Silence gives us the patience to let ideas percolate, to allow half-formed thoughts the time to develop fully. By embracing this sense of openness, we give ourselves the room to experiment, to try new things, and to see where our ideas lead without the need for immediate clarity or direction. One of the most powerful ways that silence supports creativity is by enabling us to connect with our inner world. Creativity often draws upon personal experience, emotions, and thoughts that lie beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. Silence allows us to access this inner reservoir, to dig deeper into our thoughts and feelings. In the quiet, we can reflect on our experiences, find connections between seemingly unrelated ideas, and bring these insights into our creative work. Whether we're composing a piece of music, painting a canvas, or writing a story, silence gives us the space to connect with our own inner landscape, bringing our unique perspective and authentic self into our work. In this way, silence becomes a bridge between our inner world and the outer expression of creativity. Many great thinkers, artists, and inventors have recognized the importance of silence in their creative process. Albert Einstein, for instance, often spoke about the importance of solitude in allowing him to work through complex ideas. Similarly, writers and artists have found that withdrawing into silence helps them tap into a deeper, more contemplative state of mind where creative ideas can flourish. This silence is not an absence of activity, rather, it is a kind of mental spaciousness that allows thoughts to emerge organically. It's a place where intuition takes over, where we can hear the ideas that are already within us but require quiet to come to the surface. Silence also nurtures creativity by encouraging mindfulness and focus. When we are in a state of silence, we become more attuned to the present moment. This focus allows us to engage more deeply with our ideas, to explore them fully rather than skimming over them in a rush. Silence helps us become more attentive to detail, more aware of subtleties, and more observant of the world around us. These qualities are essential for creativity as they allow us to approach our work with a sense of curiosity and wonder. In the stillness of silence, we become more mindful creators, more attuned to the nuances of our ideas and inspirations. Ultimately, silence is a gateway to creativity because it reconnects us with the essence of who we are. In the quiet, we rediscover our natural curiosity, our sense of wonder, and our innate desire to create. By stepping away from the noise, we create space for inspiration to rise, for ideas to take shape, and for our authentic voice to be heard. Silence allows us to explore the depths of our imagination, to see beyond the surface, and to bring forth the creative expression that lies within us. In a world filled with distractions, silence is a profound gift, offering us the freedom to tap into our creativity in its purest, most powerful form. Silence has an extraordinary ability to draw us closer to the divine. In the midst of a busy, noisy world, silence is a sacred space where we can turn inward, away from distractions, and open ourselves to a profound spiritual presence. In silence, we cultivate a deeper connection with something greater than ourselves, whether we refer to it as the divine, the universe, or a higher power. This silent communion allows us to experience an intimacy with the divine that goes beyond words, beyond thought, and into the realm of direct experience. It is in silence that we often find the clearest sense of peace, purpose, and transcendence. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the value of silence for deepening our connection with the divine. In contemplative practices, silence is often the foundation upon which the spiritual journey rests. Without the constant hum of the outer world, we are better able to listen to the subtle, internal whispers that guide us toward a deeper understanding of our place in the universe. This inner stillness becomes a sanctuary where we can lay aside the cares and concerns of daily life and enter into a space where time seems to dissolve. In this space, we experience a timeless connection to the divine, to a source of love, wisdom, and compassion that is always available to us, waiting patiently for us to tune in. In silence, we learn to listen not in the way we typically do, where we hear sounds, words, and ideas, but a deeper form of listening that involves the whole of our being. This listening is receptive rather than active. It involves surrender rather than seeking. In the quiet, we become receptive to insights, guidance, and an awareness of the sacred presence within and around us. When we allow ourselves to become still and quiet, we make room for the divine to speak to us, not necessarily in words, but in a feeling of peace, a sense of clarity, or an inner knowing that transcends logical understanding. Silence thus becomes a place of openness where we listen with our hearts, allowing divine presence to fill us. The divine connection found in silence is often marked by a sense of unity, a feeling of oneness that transcends the ego and the ordinary concerns of our lives. When we sit in silence, we can feel a dissolving of boundaries, a softening of the separations that typically define us as individuals. We begin to sense that we are part of something infinitely larger than ourselves, woven into a vast, interconnected web of existence. This experience of unity is often described as a form of communion with the divine, where the distinctions between self and other fade away, leaving only a profound sense of belonging and peace. This oneness nurtures a deep compassion for ourselves and for others as we realize that we are all part of the same divine fabric. In silence, we also come face to face with our inner landscape. Without the distractions of the outer world, we become aware of the subtle movements of our own mind, our thoughts, emotions, fears, and desires. This self-awareness can be transformative as it allows us to observe our own limitations and release them, opening up space for the divine to enter. When we acknowledge our own vulnerabilities and imperfections in silence, we are better able to surrender them to a higher power, to let go of the burdens we carry, and to trust that we are being guided and held by the divine. This surrender, which can be difficult amidst the noise of daily life, becomes more accessible in silence, allowing us to experience a deep sense of trust and surrender. Silence can also bring a profound sense of gratitude, which is another way we connect to the divine. In the stillness, we become aware of the countless blessings that surround us, the beauty of nature, the warmth of love, the gift of life itself. This awareness often arises spontaneously in silence as we tune into the simplicity of the present moment. We realize that in each moment there is something to be grateful for, something that reflects the beauty and generosity of the divine. This gratitude not only deepens our connection with the divine, but also reminds us that we are part of a larger benevolent order. When we are silent, gratitude flows naturally, bringing us closer to the divine and enriching our sense of purpose and meaning. Another profound way that silence deepens our connection with the divine is through fostering humility. In the quiet, we become aware of our smallness in the face of the vastness of existence. This humility is not a sense of unworthiness, but rather a recognition of our place within a greater whole. We realize that we are not the center of the universe, but part of a much larger story. This humble awareness can open us to the divine as we let go of our ego-driven desires and begin to appreciate the wisdom and power of something greater. In this humility, we find peace as we let go of the need to control and instead surrender to the flow of life, trusting that we are guided and supported. Finally, silence allows us to experience the divine as love. When we sit in stillness, we often feel an overwhelming sense of love that radiates from within us, a love that feels boundless and unconditional. This love is not contingent upon anything we have done or achieved. It is simply there, an eternal presence that flows from the divine and embraces us as we are. In this loving silence, we are able to forgive ourselves, to accept ourselves, and to extend this same love and acceptance to others. The experience of divine love in silence transforms us, helping us to become more compassionate, more patient, and more understanding. It reminds us that we are deeply cherished and that this love is always available to us, waiting in the quiet moments when we choose to connect with it. In silence, we find a doorway to the divine, a space where we can commune with a presence that is beyond words, beyond thoughts, and beyond the ordinary experiences of daily life. It is a space of peace, unity, humility, and love, where we can rest in the knowledge that we are part of something sacred and infinite. By embracing silence, we open ourselves to the profound beauty and wisdom of the divine, allowing it to flow through us and guide us toward a life filled with purpose, compassion, and connection. Silence is indeed a gateway to the divine, inviting us to experience the sacred in the depths of our own being.